So, welcome back to the first video about the rulebook. This is the introduction chapter, and the introduction chapter first talks what is the dark eye. This is this is kind of what is role-playing game. I'm going to skip this and I'm go through this part. What is Aventurian, the continent? It simply explains the different regions of the continent. I think that's interesting. This is the continent. There are different numbered regions, and I go through them from 1 to I don't know, it goes through 16 or 17 regions, 18 actually, 19, and I'm going to tell you a bit about them. As you can see, this is what they wrote about one of the regions here. It's quite short, and I keep this quite short. Nevertheless, I'm going to cover everything, and I might add something compared to what is written down here. First region at the center, the biggest, is the Mittelreich. I'm going to use German names mostly because I simply don't know the translation. I know some of the translations of the old English rules, and this was simply called the Midden Realm because it is the realm in the midden. It's an empire. It's the biggest empire, obviously, and it's the dominating power of the continent. It is your average fairy tale kingdom empire. They're living mostly the knight style, medieval people in there, knights, fairies. Actually, it has different regions which are tied to different styles of play. Some are more like a fairy tale, and some are more like primitive knighthood regions. Others are more like noble knights that hang around the castles and the kings and are jousting and stuff like that. I'm not going to explain this in detail in every region, just that you get a rough idea that this is the main knights and fairies region. Second region up here is the Orkland. It's the land of the orcs. Orcs live there. Orcs in the Dark Eye are actually they are the arch enemy in game. They are the arch enemy of the Midden Realm and of all humans. They are also the typical opponent traditionally of the adventurers, but they quickly became more than just guys you would kill for experience points. They're actually described as any other culture. They have a culture. They have a very primitive and especially brutal culture, but there are not just guys you kill for experience points. In the 4th edition, you could even create heroes, Orcan heroes. You would not really have a lot of chance to play them because everybody hates them and wants to kill them, especially when they are human, and most of the continent is inhabited by humans. But there are just a race and a species and heroes as good as humans. There is not really much different. There is a big supplement book about them, about their culture and everything. And the next region is up here, 3. It's a human inhabited region, and they are very much inspired by Earth Vikings. In every region here, you will find most of them are directly inspired by some region in real life at a specific time in history. This is very much the Dark Eye version of Vikings, with the Dark Eye often copies directly from stuff that is from the real world. Yeah, these Vikings have boats just like the Vikings in real life had, and they look similar, and a lot of cliches are true for the Vikings in the Dark Eye, but there's also a lot of custom the Dark Eye lore that is woven into this. This can at times be really confusing. For example, they reuse language. Yeah, if you were like they might use here Scandinavian language, but then they also might use it not correctly, or they might mix in completely made up language. It can be very confusing sometimes. Especially when you see things, oh, I know this from the Dark Eye, see something in museum, but it's called quite differently or something. Yeah, this is the region of the Dark Eye Vikings. Next region, 4 and 5. These two regions here, they're closely connected. There's also some fairy tale kingdoms. There's the typical starting regions. In the Dark Eye 4, they made these two, especially the one up here, the typical starting regions, because they are very much like a fairy tale kingdom you would know. It is easier to get into the playstyle, you know knights, you know the stuff that's in here, and it's a typical starting region, and it will be the first region, I think, that is described in a source book. In the 4th edition, in the 5th edition. Yeah. Else there is not much to say. These are like they're like a bit of a running gag. These regions, they're in a constant. They were once part of the Midden Realm. They're separated. No one really cared about them. They're in a constant fight, constant war, which is not the more serious. If they meet to fight in their war, it's more like a brawl between lumberjacks that accidentally meet in the forest. And they are like, they're not very advanced, and their culture is frowned upon by other bigger empires, and they're not taken that seriously. Next region, number 6, is quite the opposite of 4 or 5. That's the Horasian Empire down here, and these are the most advanced people on the continent. They're very educated, they made a lot of inventions, and they're very cultured. And the region, this is like the Four Musketeers world. They don't have the gunpowder, but else they're not so much about knights or something. They are more the style of fighters you have with the Three Musketeers, and it is a lot about intrigue here. And they're very cultured, these people, and that is the kind of gameplay you get in this region. To the west is the next region. These are these islands, and the islands are modeled like old-day Greek. You will find creatures you know from Greek legends, mythology. You will find a similar architecture and such. That's what you can expect from this region. They are even called the Cyclops Islands. This is the Horasian Empire here, number 6. I think I didn't mention the name. Next region, 8. 8, 9, and 10 are simply put the Dark Eye version of the Caribbean. This is a region of colonial empires, of pirates, treasure hunting, a lot of violence. As I said, empires from the north have colonies here or outposts. There is one big kind of native empire that is number 8, the Empire of Al-Anfa. Al-Anfa is the biggest city down there. They're kind of a bit like Spain. They have a big armada with typical ships, like in the armada. There are a sea power, and they are dealing with slaves. They are dealing with drugs, with all kind of riches. They have something like an a caravan that transports a lot of resources every year, which you can plunder or something like that. So it is kind of inspired by the Caribbean during the early colonial age. Um, there's also most of this southern region is covered by rainforest, and there are living natives in there, which are like the South American Indians, which are living in the rainforest. And there are also living a few people that are like the African people on Earth, but they are not natives to the continent of Aventuria. They once came from the south. What else is there to say? I think that sums it pretty much up. Next region is 11. The Caliphate, probably Caliphate. In English, I don't know. I haven't looked it up. Sorry. It is like a desert region on Earth, like in Africa. Yeah, you have the oasis, you have camels, you have caravans, you have people who worship a god that gave him very specific rules, and they look pretty much like the people you would associate with a desert in real life. There is, of course, a lot of very custom religion about this, and a lot of custom law for the dark eye. But this is just your Lawrence of Arabia desert region you would expect. There is even a character like Lawrence of Arabia, just in a medieval age. Next, to the east, is a region that can be summed up like 1001 Night. That's where you would meet a genie, elementals, magicians. 1001 Night. That summed it pretty much up. This is not a continent. This is not a country. This is more like a connection of people of similar culture, independent cities that control the territory around them, and so it's not a certain continent and a certain country. These parts don't really belong to one power or something. And next region is to the north. This is also a kind of an Arabian influenced region, but it's also a mixed in the Midden culture. It is a mix of medieval Europe and medieval Arabia. And this region is one where the women are the ones who are in power. So in most of the other regions, for example in the Midden Realm, there is not really a difference between males and females, men and women, when it comes to what is a typical job. No one would think anything in the Midden Realm about a woman that is a soldier or in a position of power, or is an officer, or is a queen. That is pretty normal to have that. Here, usually, the women are the one who are in power. Next region, the island to the east, Maraskan. This region is the only one. Is it the only one? I think the only one where you have a culture that is not directly influenced by one from Earth. They completely made this up. Of course, it has bits and pieces from other cultures. For example, a bit of the architecture looks like Japan, and there's a common armor that looks a bit like samurai armor, but else the complete culture, how people live, what they believe in, is not taken from anything you would notice from Earth. It is a bit similar, but there's nothing where you would say, this has really copied large parts from here or there. Um, and basically this island is like deadly and crazy, and the people on there are crazy, and everything there wants to kill you in nature. The plants want to kill you, the animals want to kill you, and I think there's even grass that tries to eat you. Everything is poisonous. Everything is poisonous. There is a really dangerous jungle in there, and nevertheless the people that are living on this island think that it is the most awesome place and the perfect place in the whole wide universe, and it was specifically made for them by the gods to live on the most awesome place in the world, with awesome creatures that try to kill you wherever you go. So, and everybody thinks the people on here are crazy, and they are. On top of this, this is a territory that is controlled by demon worshippers, which make the whole region even more dangerous, because now you have demon-influenced, deadly, poisonous animals and plants. Next region. We were talking about demon worshippers. We have another territory of demon worshippers up here. This has quite an interesting story. These territories kind of belong together. They don't belong to the same power. They're not the same country or something, but they have a similar history, because in the 90s they started a big campaign around a magician half god coming from the east out of nowhere, one who was supposed to be like killed or banished 100 years ago, but he came back from death. There was a campaign about this, how he came back to life, and you tried to stop him. Then he started to conquer everything from the east and conquered the Midden Realm, and he basically conquered this region, and then he was kind of stopped, but his minions could still hold. He was like banished again or something, or killed, and his underlings could hold on to this region, and they occupied it and turned it into a perverted, demon-infested region where every thing is influenced by demon forces, which makes it deadly and evil. And there were a region where everybody would be buried, would raise in the night, and the undead and stuff, and it's a very dark and dangerous region. And during the last years, they conquered this territory back, and this piece in the center is the only region of the Shadowlands, as they are called, that is still left, where still the demon worshippers are in power. So yeah, this is actually if you want to come up with a funky new high fantasy crazy ideas for adventures, this is a very great region, even the one that is conquered back, because everything is under demon influence, which allows you for any thing that could be magically influenced and is dangerous, you could place it here in this region, because demonic influence is basically chaotic and can create any influence, any effect, and this makes it a really cool place to play in. That's my personal opinion. Next region, die Salamandersteine. That's up here. Salamander stones. That is what it's called. That's a mountain range here, and this territory is mostly occupied by elven people who live there in the forest. It is not claimed by anybody else. Elven are independent tribes that live there. For example, like Indian tribes in South American jungle or something. They are not organized in any kind of empire or something. They live very close to nature, and they specifically choose not to organize. Elven once had huge empires on the continent and had huge cities, and but they have abandoned this kind of lifestyle and live more as small tribes close to nature in the forests. Next region, Sveltal. That's to the west here. This was once a connection of, or a region that was controlled by humans and independent cities that were loosely connected. But during the 90s, there was a campaign where the orcs again tried to conquer the Midden Realm, and they also conquered this region, and now the orcs are basically controlling this, and you have to pay tribute to them. There's only one city in here that was not conquered by the orcs. The biggest city, they made kind of a deal. They give tribute to the orcs, but the orcs are not in control of this city. Everything else is basically control of orcs, which means this region is a region where there is no law and order or anything. You're allowed to do basically anything as long as you have the power to push your will through. Yeah, the one who's stronger gets to tell what's going on, and if you can deal with all the orcs and kill a few of them, they might even let you get away with it because you're strong, and they will respect you or something. This is kind of like a Wild West region, a really wild, brutal West region. Next region, Bornland, up here, that is called Foundland. I think was called in the English Old English rules. It is very much inspired by old Russia. Yeah, it's high in the north. It is it's not very fertile region because it is high north. And if you think of old Russia, then you're pretty close. There's also a lot of vocabulary that was taken from Russia, and a Russian player made an unofficial resource material about this region, where she described it even more Russian-like, because as Russian, she knows a lot about Russian culture. This is also a region where the current big campaign takes place. It is a region of old magical mysteries, and the whole land is quite magically influenced, or was, and this is coming back. And there is six adventure books are coming out with a longer campaign that takes place in this region and is about the history and the mysteries and things that taken place in this region. There are already 1 or 2 books about this already out, and they will also be released in English. The last region is the High North. What kind of region is this? This is a mix of North America, the northern part of North America, Alaska, northern Scandinavia or something similar. People live here. A similar culture exists here. This is not a very often used and played in region, but still you can. What else is there to say about the continent? You see, there is the landmass. The continent is going on here in the east, but this is these are mountains you can pass. There is directly another continent attached here to the east, but no one is able to get there because the mountains are simply too high, and there is like a ban from the gods that basically prevents you to go from here to the continent in the east. So nevertheless, this continent is described in the East by fans. The Ulysses even said the description is so good, we're going to release this as a Bible book. So it's not so official, it's unofficial, but officially supported. Yeah, that's what's to say about the continent and what you can expect in kind of play styles. What does it else tell this chapter? It has a list of the gods. I'm not going through them in detail. I'm going to tell you something about the gods in more detail when I'm going to tell you what kind of priests there are. There are different gods. There are a lot of gods in Aventuria, and there's no question, except for few, there's no question that they exist and that they are gods, because when you're a priest of that god, you get certain powers from that god, and there have even been historical events where the god appeared themselves and stuff like that. Most people on the continent worship 12 gods that belong to each other, and they are the most important ones. This is the list of these gods. They, like on Earth, they have certain aspects attached to them, and there are even some gods who have opposing aspects. But these gods in general are all good gods. These 12 main gods are good gods. There is no like evil god, you could say, in there. Even if there is a god of thieves or something, he is not so shady. Yeah. For a bad god, you have these 12 guys down here. They are kind of the bad gods. They are archdemons, and every archdemon is closely connected to one of the gods, and he is just the perverted version of the god. I'm not going to tell you anything about them at all, not in detail, because they don't play that much of a part in the core rules. There's a lot about them to say. There's a long list of like what demons belong to the archdemons, are servants of them, and you can summon them. And there are a few examples. Summoning rules are in the core rules, and but I think there are only 2 or 3 demons you can actually summon. There will be more material coming out, special rules for magicians, extended rules for magicians, and they will have a wealth of information about these archdemons, because they are not so much godlike creatures, they are magical creatures, but nevertheless they are opposing to the gods. What else is in this chapter? The rest is only example of play, where they wrote down kind of a play where it's written down what every player says at the table, and what the game master says, and how the game goes, and what they are doing. I'm not going through that. So that's it about the introductory chapter. Next chapter is core rules. Core rules will be about game mechanics, core game mechanics. I'll explain you in detail in the next chapter how skills are working. For this chapter, that's it. That's it for the introductory chapter. If you have some questions, if you want to know something, if you think I said something that is confusing, if you know the game and think I said something that was wrong, please comment. And if you see a comment about something and you know the answer, please answer. I try to answer too if I find the time to. So far, thank you for your attention, and bye.